Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and today we're going to be talking about my top 10 roll and write board games. Now these are when generally you have some type of randomized element that's going to be placed on the center of the table, and it's going to dictate what everybody uses for their own personal player boards, and you're going to be using that information to write or draw or put something down onto this piece of paper in front of you. So this is literally putting pencil to paper in a fantastic way, filled with lots of fun combos. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the list. Now before we jump into the list, I have two honorable mentions. The first one is Sonora here. Now Sonora is a flick and write game, so it leans more into dexterity than it does into the roll and write genre. You're going to be flicking discs into a central board, and wherever they land, that determines what values you write into kind of the 4 mini games on your own personal board. This is one that you can get really good on it, but I don't think it quite goes into this roll and write style list because it is more of a dexterity game. This is something you can practice at and get really good at and nag a bunch of bonuses that way. Now, the other honorable mention I want to talk about is Super Skill Pinball 4K, and this is one that I have a really hard time recommending to people because it comes with 4 different games inside, all using this Super Skill Pinball system. This is a pinball-style roll and write game where you're going to be taking this shiny little ball token, moving it around your board, and it goes from top to bottom. It's a great system, it makes a lot of sense, and it really does replicate a pinball game well. You'll get it to your flippers, you flick them back up, and then you'll be able to start the whole thing over again. So it sounds like a very solid system, but unfortunately 3 of these maps are extremely boring. They do a lot of the same repetitive motions, and the best plays are often ones that are just really repetitive and boring. You're crossing off a box, moving, cross off box, moving, and you do that for maybe 3 minutes. And that's really it, and it's the best play, and it's extremely tedious and not fun, which is really sad. There's not a lot of customization in 3 of the maps, but that being said, one of the maps here, the Dragon Slayer map, is so much fun. A lot of these boards will have different areas that you can score and whatnot, and a lot of them make a lot of sense. You're trying to get sets and bonuses and specific numbers, but the way that the Dragon Slayer makes things exciting and changes it up is by adding these level up powers. Every time that you fill up one of these EXP bars at the top here, you're going to get to unlock your next bonus. And this is so cool, so fun. You're able to really customize your game and get a lot of things going. It allows you to change up things, make meaningful decisions that are actually going to impact the course of the game, as opposed to just doing the thing that just seems correct. There's lots of paths to choose from, and it really differentiates the game, and it's one that I do recommend because of this mode. Unfortunately, the others you're probably never going to play because this one's just so good, but they are there if you want to give them a try. So that's my second honorable mention, Super Skill Pinball 4K. Now that being said, let's go ahead and jump into my number 10, Encore. Now Encore goes by another name, Nakmal, and this is kind of one of those stereotypical roll and write games you may see. This has the exploding dice in the front with lots of checkboxes, and Stronghold Games puts out a lot of these, but some of them are pretty dang good, this one being one of them. This is a great family favorite. This is one that a lot of people enjoy, and it's a very simple system. On your turn, you're going to be rolling all these dice, and you're picking one of the numbers and one of the color X's. And the number determines how many of the X's you cross out for a specific color, so you combine them and make a pair. If you take one of the question marks, you get to choose what the number or color is, depending on which die it is. And then whatever you don't take, everyone else gets to pick from those. So when it's your turn, you get a lot of options, and when it's not your turn, you're still playing, but you're getting less options. I really like this system, and I like this style as you're racing to fill up these kind of Tetris-style shapes on your board, but the shapes are already affixed to the board. Now, my favorite part about this game is the decision of when to use these wild tokens, because if you keep them, you actually get extra points for each of the wild tokens at the end of the game. So it's a great decision here on when and where to use them. Super, super fun. And if you're not sure about this game and its replayability potentially, there are lots of extra expansion boards that are on the BGG file page that you can go find and download and have lots of variety for your game. So I strongly recommend this one. It's got a lot of replayability. This is Encore, a great roll and write game. My number 9 is going to go to Railroad Inc. Challenge Lush Green Edition. Now this is a railroad building game. You're going to have 2 different railroads that you're going to be creating based on the dice that you'll be rolling. Everybody is going to be using the same dice, but it's up to you to place them in interesting ways. Now the Railroad Inc. Challenge Edition has introduced 2 things that I think really puts this above the original edition. It offers these different bonus spaces, as you can see here. There are pre-printed bonuses on the board that allow you to take special abilities or special extra ways to get points, and I really like that. There are also special goals that you'll be trying to get, and these come in the form of these dry erase goal cards, which are just really nifty. You can cross them off. It also offers a lot of new different dice faces, which makes things even more interesting when it comes to creating your paths. I really like the simple system here, and my favorite part about this game have to be the little expansion dice. The base games of every edition come with these 2 mini expansions that you can plug and play into your games, and then you can also buy lots of these tiny little expansion packs to plug and play as you see fit. If you're looking for a comprehensive list on which of these are the best, I think that Tia over at Takaijo did a tier list video with all of these different expansions, so I really recommend you go check that one out. But Railroading Challenge is a fantastic package. That's my number 9. My number 8 is going to go to the game Silver and Gold. Silver and Gold is another very small roll and write style game, but in this one you're going to be kind of picking out contracts in the form of treasure maps, and you're trying to fill them up using Tetramino pieces. This game features a really cool system of dry erase cards, very similar to the challenge cards from the last game, but you are trying your best to fill up these cards and fill up these points. So you'll be flipping one card in the center, and everybody is going to be writing this on their boards. You're going to be doing your best to use the pieces to cover the different symbols on your boards, because the coins will allow you to get these extra trophy points, the different colors you can use for set collection bonuses, and palm trees score you even more points. So there's lots of different ways that you can choose your paths, but it's in a very easy to play, very approachable roll and write style game. This is definitely probably the lightest game on this entire list, but I think it's so accessible and so fun that I think it deserves a place on this list. So that's my number 8, Silver and Gold. My number 7 goes to a new one, Dinosaur Island Rar and Write. This recently delivered from the Dinosaur World Kickstarter and was a very pleasant surprise. This takes the whole concept of building a dino park in front of you and using the familiar DNA where, well, you're actually going to be collecting DNA and turning them into dinosaurs, as well as creating locations in your park and using a Jeep to move around and visit in the form of roads. So the game comes with all of these really big chunky dice, and you're actually going to be using the dice as a dice drafting and worker placement style. You'll be using the dice, getting the values on them, and then placing them on a space and taking the action. You can also reuse a space, but if you do so, you're going to gain some threat based on the value of the dice you covered. So there's a lot of cool choices here when you play. You also are going to be visiting characters in your park and doing your best to visit all sorts of different areas, because if you do, you're going to get lots of extra excitement bonuses. So there's a big incentive to drawing a large map and visiting lots of locations using the roads available. Now, my favorite part about this game has to be the different assistants and the way the income track works. At the end of every 2 dice phases, you're going to be going through this checklist. You'll resolve your attractions, then your specialists, then you'll go on your Jeep tour, and then generate excitement bonuses, and this is just a great system. I love how satisfying it is to kind of tick all these boxes and get all these bonuses at once, and it just feels really satisfying to get bonus after bonus after bonus after bonus and scoring lots of points. This is one that I'm really enjoying, and I think does a great job with the system. I actually like this more than I like the original 2 Dinosaur Island games. So Dinosaur Island Rar and Write, it's a fantastic system and one that I really enjoy. That's my number 7. My number 6 is going to go to Biblios Quill and Parchment, the roll and write version of one of my favorite games ever, Biblios. Now, this has a very interesting mechanism where you're going to be getting a slew of dice, and the game is going to be separated into halves. In the first half, you take your dice, you roll them, and based on what type of dice you're rolling, you get bonuses. So these white dice give you your currency in the game. The book dice here allow you to go up different tracks, and you're doing a majority scoring at the end of the game for whoever's highest on the tracks. And lastly, you have the black dice, which allow your characters to move on this little map that's in front of you. So this little map is going to score you additional bonuses and things along the way and points at the end game. Now, after that first phase, you're doing that all simultaneously, gaining resources and gaining your currency. Now, in the second half of the game, you're actually going to be doing the reverse. You're going to be spending all the currency you collected in the first half to actually purchase your dice. And these also come with extra bonuses. Things like adding additional points to the different book tracks or getting extra movement or what have you. There's a lot of variance here and a lot to keep you coming back. My favorite part about this game has to be the reroll aspect at the start of the game. So in the first half, you're going to get some rerolls that you can use to mitigate your different dice. You either reroll everything, 1 die, or nothing. And I really like this choice. It allows you to pick and choose if your currency is more important to you for control in later rounds, or racing for specific tracks is more important to you. There's a lot of great decisions here, and I think that it does it in a great little package, a fantastic implementation of the Biblios style game. Now, I do want to mention that there is an extra thing that comes in the Kickstarter edition, and that's going to include these bidding cards. And I think the bidding cards are pretty dang fantastic. They offer another way that you can spend your currency, and you'll just get bonus dice throughout the game. And I think this is great. It really puts pressure on people to hold or spend their cash for these bonuses, but the bonuses are very real because they are additional dice, whether it be movement or moving up the cathedral track or getting extra books. So I really like this, and if you can get a copy of the Kickstarter edition, definitely look for it. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can find one. And that's Biblios Quill and Parchment. Wonderful implementation of Biblios. My number 5 goes to Cartographers. Now, this is a role-player tale, so it takes place in this role-player universe with all the different fantasy creatures and races, but you're going to be doing your best to draw a map in the best way possible. And what do I mean by that? Well, at the start of the game, you're going to have these different seasons laid out, and in each season, you're going to be scoring 2 of these objective cards. So this scoring is actually lifted from a game called Isle of Skye that uses something very similar. Now, you'll be able to prepare for the current round scoring objectives, but also plan for the future, because you know in future rounds you're going to be scoring next round maybe B and C, and then the round after that C and D, and in the last round you're going to score D and A again. So you have all of these things that you're planning for straight from turn 1. I really like this because you're evaluating the different pieces based on the time of the game that you're actually playing. In addition, the game is dead simple. All you're going to be doing is flipping a card, and then you're writing anywhere on your board however you see fit, and ultimately to satisfy those different objectives. Now, my favorite part about this game is the variance that comes in the different scoring objectives. It really does change up the game each time, and I think that it works really well, especially with the different villain cards, because these monsters will pop up as you play, and the person on your left will get to draw on your board so they can look at the objectives and see where and when this specific creature can mess you up. So I really like this style and this idea, and I love how all of the mechanics mesh together to make a wildly unique puzzle every time you play it. This is a fantastic game. That is Cartographers, my number 5. My number 4 goes to the game Welcome To. Welcome To has you playing as a bunch of architects designing the best neighborhood possible, and that's going to include things like different apartment numbers, making sure they're all in a row, having nice pools, different parks. All is going to be put together to make a perfect neighborhood, your perfect neighborhood. Now, how does this translate into gameplay? Well, gameplay is very straightforward. On your turn, everybody is going to have these 3 cards face up in the middle, and then each of those cards is going to be paired with a bonus. So it's going to be up to you to decide which of those pairs do you want to do. Do you want 7 in offense? Do you want 5 in offense? Do you want 6 in offense? This is not a very good example because there's many different bonuses. There are things like pools, constructions, and parks, in addition to fences, that are all going to give you additional bonus abilities as you play. Now, similarly to Railroading Challenge, you're also going to have these goals at the top of the board that you're going to be doing your best to try to fulfill. So you have this tension as to which path are you going to take and which scoring objective are you going to try to race through first. But ultimately, the biggest puzzle is you have to get your numbers in a row. The 7s are the most popular number in the entire deck, so you have to keep that in mind because the numbers are not evenly distributed. So your higher numbers are going to be a lot harder to get as well as your lower numbers, and you're trying to fill out all of these different rows in your neighborhood as best you can. Now, my favorite part about this game has to be the simple action selection system. I love that you have a lot of choices each round. I also really love that each card reveals what's underneath it so that you can plan for the future. There's a lot of interesting things going on here, and it's always a blast to play. In addition, this game is filled with all sorts of different expansion sheets which offer new and interesting goals, new ways to change up the system with things like zombies, Halloween, trick-or-treat, whatever you think. There's so many interesting ones. One of my favorite ones is actually the Easter one, where you're going to be trying to use numbers with circles in them, like 8 has 2 circles, to pick up eggs, so placing becomes even more of a puzzle. I really like this style game, and I love all the opportunities that exist in it. That's my number 4, Welcome To. My number 3 is going to go to the game Clever Cubed. Now, this is going to kind of cover all of the games in this series. That's Ganshan Clever, Clever Cube, Twice as Clever. All of these really do fit, and they're all fantastic games. And there's some of my favorite in this roll and write genre. They make for wonderful solo games, but really all they are is they fall into that line of games where it's just dice exploding at you. You are just rolling dice and filling in boxes, but you do so in such a satisfying way. Now, the game itself is very simple. On your turn, you're going to have all of these dice, and these dice you're going to be picking from them one at a time. When you take a die, all the dice of a lower value are going to end up on this dish, and they're going to be for the other players. So, do you take a low die so you have more options in your turn, or do you take a high die to ensure that you get the effect you need? There's some great decisions here, and I really like the way it works. So that's the very basics of the game. Now, this one is a little bit different based on how it scores. Now, each of these clever games is scored in a different way, and it uses the colors in different ways. And for example, the yellow dice in this game allows you to put a check mark in a specific row based on the number of the die it was. This brown one says that you can cross off any box, but you could never cross off something to the left of it. So there's a lot of interesting choices based on the version that you choose. Now, in addition to playing the different mini games, you'll also be able to unlock all sorts of different bonuses. And these bonuses are going to allow you to play on other games and generally with whatever number you want. So this game is all about finding which dice are going to trigger bonuses so you're able to take lots and lots of actions. There's just so many fun little things going on and lots of combo potential. Now, the reason that I chose Clever Cubed over the other three is because it introduces a new type of bonus that I really, really like, and that's this middle bonus here. This is the set a die to whatever you want. So whenever you take a die, you're allowed to pick the number that's circled, cross it off, and turn that die into that number for the round. It offers you a lot of ways to set up cool plays, and it's just a great addition to the game, in my opinion. There's a lot to love in this system, and any of these three are going to be a blast. Now, my ranking for enjoyment of these is going to be this one first, then the original, and then the sequel. So if you're going to get them in that order, but really they're all pretty dang fantastic games. So that's my number 3, Clever Cubed, Twice as Clever, and Ganshan Clever. Now, my number 2 is going to go to the game Fleet the Dice Game. This has you playing as owners of a giant fleet of fishing ships. How fun is that? First off, the theme is a win for me, but the mechanics are where this game really shines. You're going to be using your influence and picking up all of these bonuses in the form of dice. It's a dice drafting game, so you'll roll them out, and whoever's first will pick one and get the ability. You'll have 2 giant boards on your table, and each of those boards are going to have lots of different areas for you to check. Whenever you check one of these fish areas, you're going to get some type of cool passive bonuses, a fishing license, in addition to boats that you can actually fill with fish every fishing phase. And then after the fishing phase happens, you're going to move to the town phase, where you're going to be using symbols in order to get additional abilities in the harbor, or the wharf, or the market. And the wharf gives you all sorts of special abilities and bonuses, and harbor gets you extra ways to do fishing and scoring. There's just so much to love about this game because of the massive amounts of variance that comes with it, and just the system is so rock solid. It's one that you can play a lot. The solo mode for this is fantastic, but my favorite thing about this game has to be just the satisfaction of the different tracks and the different licenses. The bonuses here in this game all compile. So if you take one of these swordfish bonuses, you'll get that basic bonus if you get that first license, but then you have choices to increase the ability of your license. And when you do, you can potentially get extra money or extra points. There's just a lot of really cool stuff happening, and it really benefits you to go down specific paths, but you can also get lots of benefits by branching out. There's lots of different paths to take in this game, and it's just a wonderful time every time. I love the system. I love the bonuses. I love how all of the abilities work with the different abilities in play. It's one of my favorite things in these styles of games, and I love how satisfying earning extra bonus actions becomes, and just the freedom and the choice that you have for this game. There's a lot to love about Fleet the Dice Game, one that I really recommend you go check out. A fantastic game. That's my number 2, Fleet the Dice Game. And my number 1 is going to go to the game Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian's Wall is a new 2021 game, and I'm so surprised how great it is. This is one that I continuously pull out and have a great time with it, whether it be in a multiplayer or solo setting. This game has you playing as Roman generals. You're in charge of protecting and building up the Hadrian's Wall itself, and doing your best to prevent the Picts from coming in and taking you out. You're going to do this through allocating your resources onto the different areas of your board. Now, just like Fleet the Dice Game, you're going to have these 2 giant boards. One on the left is going to be more about how you're tracking the wall itself and increasing that strength, but the right side has your citizen tracks, and these citizens will offer you lots of different abilities and effects. So the game itself is huge in scope. You actually are going to be getting resources and pieces that you'll collect, and every round the cards on the board will dictate those resources that you get. And then if you have any of the production abilities unlocked, you'll also produce more resources, and it's up to you to kind of pick and choose the paths that you see fit. Do you go for these production buildings early, or do you focus on some of the other tracks? It's up to you to decide. Now, there's all sorts of stuff going on, but my favorite thing in this game have to be the different citizen tracks. I love how they all work a little bit differently and have their own ways of scoring and interweaving with each other. For example, the performers track here is not only going to help you in the theater by letting you go up on the other tracks once per year, but you also are going to be able to train up gladiators and send them to fight for fame and fortune. And to top it all off, in addition to all of these citizen tracks that you're going to be climbing, there are actual invaders in the form of Picts that are going to be coming to terrorize your land. On the top of each of these cards here, you're going to be revealing them based on the year you're in, and that determines where they're coming from. On your board, it's up to you to decide which of your fortifications that you're going to be blocking off. Are you going to block the left, the right, the middle, or are you going to take your chances on some of them? It's got a lot of really interesting choices, and you can kind of figure out and look at probability to see where you need to protect, but there's just a lot of cool stuff you can do in this game. Very similar to Fleet, you're going to have lots of different paths and choices, but I love the structure of this one. The other thing that I really love about this game is the objective system. At the start of each round, you're going to be drawing 2 cards from your objective deck. In addition to the resources that you get, you're going to get the resources on one of these cards, but you're going to score for the other. So you have to pick and choose which of the paths that you're going to go down based on the resources you're getting or based on the scoring objective itself. So there's a really cool dynamic here and a choice that you have to make every single round that's going to set you up for the whole game. I love this system and I love this style. In addition to that, there are also 2 other pieces of information that will not only affect you, but the other players around the table. So you have a lot of things to consider based on the different progress that each player has made on the citizen tracks. I love the way this system works, and I love how it really differentiates the games that you play by pushing you down specific pathways. Hadrian's Wall is a surprise hit for me, but it's one that I think I'm going to continue playing for a long, long time. So that's my number 1, Hadrian's Wall. And that's the list. Those are my top 10 roll and write board games. What did you think of the list? Do you agree with my picks? Are there any games in this genre that you really enjoy and you like? Do you think Sonora counts as a roll and write board game? I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching SideGame Strong.